What's an underrated, boring business that can make you rich? Story 1. I came across an industry within business which I never expected would work, but it is more than a gold mine. Chemical recycling is something that I had come across several years back. It works along the lines of providing chemicals that one industry has no use of to another that is in need of them. Having no knowledge on chemicals whatsoever, I had a feeling this was going to be something huge. I began looking for firms that were disposing chemicals and wasting them. I did the legwork of finding buyers in different industries that could actually use those materials. The payments are done to you as a mediator, that is, you do not have the product with you, you only arrange for the movement of the product and ensure all the processes conform to the regulations. All the testing and quality control is done by the end users, thus your participation is not much but gives high returns. The good thing? There is hardly any competition in this area, and within weeks I had a handful of key contacts and the business was really rolling. It is not exciting, but it sure as hell pays, and the best part of it is that anyone can do it. It is the type of business that is boring to speak about, but will make you a millionaire if you are ready to go the extra mile. Story 2. The history of my friend's father and his entrepreneurial ventures is something I find very interesting, as he operates one of the best grass seed companies in the market. Which in turn sounds kind of dull, no? Grass seeds? The exception here, however, is that it was not the product that he focused on, but on the ever-elusive demand. Many people get excited about a hyper-business culture which includes tech startups and new media businesses, but this guy understood that there was also a good reason to invest in selling something that people usually disregard. Every business expansion stage he has overseen to ensure he built the business himself. The process, starting with accumulating, which he had to enforce it for every layer all the way to the last silo of dropping off the product onto the customer's porch, was well organized and efficient. Another of his admirable qualities is how he dealt with customers so that farmers, gardeners, and landscapers received utmost care. In the course of time, his name became known, and before long, he took over the whole industry. His is a storytelling of how any seemingly boring business such as hawking grass seed can be a rewarding endeavor. If only one is ready to take the trouble to smell the coffee brewing in corners where others are not even looking. Story 3. Little did I expect a laundromat to become the godsend that will facilitate my pursuit of financial freedom. But here I am, seated on the owner's chair as the quarters keep piling up. It all began when I inherited an old laundromat located in a functioning neighborhood which also looked as if it has seen better days. It was an already dying business, or so people used to say, and I believed them the first time. But then again I thought, what's the worst that could happen? I went ahead and bought new machines, painted the walls, installed a few ceiling fans, and started a loyalty program. In the beginning there was little to show, and then it dawned on me the focus of the area was embedded to such a demographic which was not prepared to drive 15 minutes to do simple laundry, and so they came. And they came again. It was not just as simple as presenting a service. There was a space that was clean, reliable, and most importantly, easy to use. That was the real value proposition. Years down the line, and I have waves of people coming into the business. I don't even work there full-time anymore. It's a few staff, and the business is self-sustaining. What's crazy is how little there is in the way of competition. Even in the area people had dismissed as too boring or too unfashionable. So if you think that laundromats are yesterday's news, think twice. I am making a decent amount of money from this ridiculous industry without experiencing any legal and financial troubles on a monthly basis. Story 4. A few years back, I was in the same boat as everyone else. I worked a paycheck-to-paycheck job and always found myself wondering how people managed to drive expensive cars and live in lavish houses. However, one afternoon at a barbecue, I met a guy who said he was a dentist. It did not mean anything much to me, but there was more that came to it. As we continued the conversation, he told me all about how he was earning huge sums of money, more than I had ever thought possible. The surprising part? About how many people do not want to be one, simply because they feel it is too dull or too tasking. Honestly, I was taken aback. It only requires a little bit of education, a certain level of precision, and the readiness to work hard. To cut a long story short, I took interest in it, and while it was not for me, I began understanding how many people underestimate the potential of what many term as boring or dry industries. Most people are not aware that dentists earn quite well for what a lot of them think is the simple act of repairing their teeth. There are no crazy amounts to spend on it, no need to come up with innovations, just plain-out work which is always available. The most intriguing thing? Because it is a low-risk activity, it is a type of business which undertakes consistent development. And more so, if you are wise enough, it is possible to advance her the level. It is like a treasure trove which people would ordinarily pay no attention to simply because it is not ostentatious. While some of us seek long-term security and riches, sometimes the boring things do make the most sense. Story 5. I recall the time when I first contemplated on becoming an agent in insurance. To be honest, it appeared to be one of those occupations that hardly piqued anyone's attention, or, let's say especially, appeared like a digression from trends of modern occupations. I was not, however, amazed for long, since I later interacted with some previously hardened agents and saw the bright side of the job instead. One of them even told me, after you have a good clientele, the rest is just a matter of sitting back. At first it was hard to think otherwise, but this was completely true. I, for one, worked pro bono, cold calling, meeting, and entertaining clients, knowing the policy from A to Z. But after too few years of going through the hell, let's call it, something miraculous occurred. The commissions began to stream in, every month, like the day it was due. I had created a referral loop and limited my practical involvement, and yet it was increasing pay I was receiving. The great part of the business, however, is that it is not about how long or how hard you work. It is about working smart and creating synergies. You have a good list of clients, then most of your work is account management and advice, and there are still revenues. It may look uninteresting at first, but this is one of those quiet businesses that, with time and positioning, can make you a lot of money. Story 6. My perception of the paper-making industry was that it was unsurprisingly a very unexciting business venture. However, to my surprise, I was never right in that assertion. Some years back, I walked into a tiny paper-making factory in an unusually quiet town, and upon speaking to the proprietor, I realized that there was something unique about this factory. The paper mill made use of recycled waste materials to produce quality paper, which was then new to me. Published books actually contain paper. However, this extreme is correct. Paper is very prevalent in books, in packaging, in labels, in everything else that you can think of. The owner had found a gap in the market, supplying bespoke, eco-friendly paper products to different businesses, and the need was on the rise. Once I participated in it, constructive engagement in the processes of conducting industrial or engineering activities reached astonishing levels, disclosing that there was commensurate technology to transform the process of paper manufacturing. Interestingly, there is a market for such products that commands a movie-level pricing for green-conscious offerings. At the end of the issue, it was never about the paper itself. It was about your attitude toward this issue. It turned out that this boring business was profitable due to the existence of a market and the concern for sustainability. So sure, the business which you least expect results in profit may be the most profitable one. Story 7. I could not come to believe that such plain materials like cardboard boxes could yield one a huge benefit. One of my friends, Tom, is in the manufacture and distributing of boxes to various companies in the area, and he has a small but growing business. At first, this was the most boring thing that one could think of selling. Boxes? Who sells boxes? Up until he elaborated on the fact that every other industry requires boxes for storing goods, for transporting goods, and even for wrapping gifts. The thing is, there are not so many people who want to get into this kind of business, since it is very boring, and does not have dazzle like that of, say, technology or fashion. But that is exactly the reason it is ideal. He started with contacting local businesses with a promise of better price and faster turnaround than the big boys in the industry, and before long he had customers in their numbers. Gradually, he went up to mass production, more so on supplying warehouses, retail shops, and online order fulfillment businesses. He even ventured into custom logos and prints, which was a game-changer in his line of business. These days, Tom is simply making all sorts of money. The best part? People have to use it, and it's hard to get tired of it because there is always something new to streamline the processes of manufacture and supply. Who would have thought that one can earn lots of money selling such mundane things like cardboard? Story 8. I remember when I first got into transport and logistics. I did not really know what to expect. I was over in those dead-end office jobs that made you sit in a single place all day. A friend of mine let me know that either trucking or any logistical work would be a fit for me since it can attract a lot of money, so I decided to give it a chance. The working hours were extreme. In some instances, I would be awake by 3 in the morning, carrying loads to other parts of the state and coming back to do the same the subsequent day. It wasn't a walk in the park, but the salary, that was a different level. From then on, I was earning more than I had ever done at any point of my life. It took quite some time to get accustomed to the environment, more so the kind of work put in. But before long, I started appreciating the potential in it. There were all these small logistics companies that kept on coming up behind flashing cars and offered good money in return for creating order in chaos. So as long as I could keep the wheels turning, I was making more and more money. I do not think that it is for everyone. The pressure, the hours, the changing shifts away from home might hurt you. Nonetheless, if you are strong enough, this so-called dull industry will take good care of you for decades. Story 9. Until I made up my mind to give it a shot, never did I imagine that a car wash business could literally pay off. I was in the corporate world. I held a 9-to-5 job with the rest of my colleagues killing me softly, working so hard and always thinking of opportunities to become rich in this flashy business of technology or even real estate. But one evening, while returning home, I saw this tiny car wash, and for some reason it clicked. It was not flashy, but it had constant flow of customers, and I thought to myself that it must be a gold mine. I made some savings, applied for a mortgage, and purchased one of these dilapidated car washes. At first, it was difficult attending to a lot of repairs, cleaning up and operating the machines, but about after a year I settled down. There was a fly in a rub. I introduced an unlimited wash subscription plan where a customer pays a certain amount for any number of washes in the month, and that really helped with my cash flow. They were cheap to maintain, yet they never lacked customers. The enterprise was rather stable, allowing for better planning. What astonished me the most was that how much money people actually spent on things like waxing, detailing, and special extras as opposed to simply the basic wash. The great thing about the car wash business is that it does not follow fads. Cars have to be clean, and if properly managed, they will clean them for you every time you value their service. From then to now, my formerly petty and dilapidated activity is now a busy enterprise transforming my financial status into one I had not enjoyed before. Story 10. It's not where I want to be in a couple of years, and I have no chance of saving money for an elaboration in this dead-end position. Several months back, however, I stumbled into a sale sign of a very old, very small car wash. I'll be honest, I had my doubts right away. Who would want to buy a car wash, honestly? How fun and how pleasant was car washing? Yet there was something in that business that I just could not ignore. I saw to what extent it was possible to expand. It might have sounded insane, but I went for it and bought it. Everyone, including me, anticipated that she would lose her mind and fail. The first thing I did was to attempt to make the place more presentable. I even bought new equipment and performed a customer service overhaul. Eventually, the business began to grow to some extent, but it did not happen easily or quickly. Consistency and trust with my client base were the factors that made all the difference. Customers' tariff plans were introduced, discounts for referrals were applied, and other services such as detailing were introduced. By the end of that year, the situation improved in terms of earnings. Overall, it may be undervalued, but it is sustainable. The wonderful thing about running a car wash enterprise is that the costs are very low, and the business is always in demand. Everyone has to get their cars cleaned regardless of the circumstances, and most people are not averse to paying for added value. A business model I presumed would be boring, interesting solution. I am glad I started this business, as I am earning much more than what I used to earn in my previous employment, and this is something I really cannot believe that I was about to let pass me to go. Story 11. I didn't think it was possible to make serious bucks out of something as dynamic and unpredictable as cryptocurrencies, and yet here I am. It all started several years ago when I came across news stories about bitcoins. At first it looked like another hype bubble which will burst soon enough, much like the other happenings around me and some late-night digging on Reddit. I was ready to take it out on my wallet, although it was some few hundreds that I started with and was more than willing to go higher. For weeks, I read and watched a lot of ad practice with a minimal amount. There were even days when my portfolio hit the rock bottom and I honestly felt like giving up. However, the thought which stopped me from doing so was what earnings could be made once the right tactics were understood. Eventually, I improved myself and began to comprehend the tendencies of the market and how to wait for the right moment. Buying the dips and riding out the storm instead of selling out in fear. Fast forward to now, I didn't expect to earn this much from crypto, and what was a mundane, high-risk, high-returns, and corrupt business is my now primary source of income. Even now, the prices make me anxious, but I have come to have faith in the system, and that has transformed my existence. Story 12. My interest in vending machine business began when I first came across the idea. Surprisingly, it felt too straightforward to venture into for profits. I mean, how much of a return can venturing out with a vending machine bring in? However, thanks to the internet with a few months of forums, success stories, and looking at how many people were earning from the machines, I set out to try it out. Hence, I started vending business cautiously adding a few machines. One in a gym that was relatively near to me and also another in an office block. At the beginning, the returns were modest, just a couple of dollars every now and then. Rather than quitting, however, I continued to put all the profits back into the business, purchased several more machines, and started to place them in more profitable locations. That's when improvement began. Wasting no time, I realized it was not merely a question of setting up a number of machines in the vicinity. It did not make any logistic sense because only particular areas where customers were expected to spend money mattered, and also the upkeep. Ensuring that machines were stocked on a regular basis, cleaning them, and ensuring that there was an attractive selection greatly helped in maintaining profits. Little by little, the business started to expand, and soon I was receiving more passive income than I had ever anticipated. The beauty of it was that it wasn't some high-risk, flashy venture. It was slow, it was dependable, and it required very minimum maintenance after I had set everything up. Gradually, I was able to establish a good network of machines that just do their work without me being there. The most interesting thing, it's not an area that people consider when they are thinking of suggestions on how to make quick money, yet it shows that boring business opportunities are sometimes the most rich. It is still amazing how a business with little input can be maintained, would be capable of earning such a great income even as I engage in active pursuits. Story 13. Selling printers has always been one of the most workmanlike business concepts for me. Who would even want to engage in such an old-fashioned product with the advent of products and services going digital? How naive of me! A couple of years back, I plunged myself into and embarked on building a small printers resale business. I concentrated mainly on cheap and business printers, thinking it was only a side business that I was venturing into. It was not a side business surprise. The remote working conditions arose, and there was an upsurge of home and office users in search of cheap and efficient printers. It wasn't about any printer because people were particular whether it was easy to fix, trouble-free in usage, and worked both with simple documents and big pages of text along with printer's work. It also helped that I excelled in something different from what others did. The approach was not about printer sales and after-sales service. Customers were also advised on which printer will best suit them, and the printers were set up for them at an additional cost. This minor alteration worked wonders. It was like magic. Before long, I was getting active customers who were relatives and friends. To my amazement, the business picked up very fast, and I later managed to strike a steady supply arrangement which helped maintain my stock levels and competitive prices. It did not take long to understand that this was not a boring business, it was actually a booming business. There may not be glamorous products, but the thirst of printers, and when customers are taken good care of, they remain loyal. What began as a mundane, boring thought metamorphosized into a rewarding, financially stable enterprise and completely influenced my perspective on what kind of businesses can prosper. Story 14. I never believed that a warehouse which operates on a self-service mode would become a cash cow. Actually, I came up with this idea around 5 years ago when I was faced with storage issues of my own. I had to rent storage space at a facility, and as I carried in my belongings, I saw an odd thing. There were so many people entering and exiting almost like they were all businesses hosted in those little rooms. That made me wonder. What if I were able to create a storage facility where customers were allowed the convenience of keeping, collecting, and depositing their goods without the aid of attendants? At first it sounded like a boring concept, just a building with several empty rooms to let out, but I later on understood the vision. I discovered an affordable place, secured it with heavy-duty cameras, and created a rental space renting website. I began to provide cheap prices and all-day, all-night access. That turned out to be the main attraction, if I may phrase it that way. It was like when we say Cinderella the very first time in a theater. All roads were clear. The expense of keeping the place running was inexplicably minimal. And as a number of individuals began using it more for their business needs, so did my earnings. With time, the storage space developed into a service center, enabling yourself to be your own boss, even when it is a business venture that is any active. Whoever would have imagined that these easily available storage spaces could be an avenue of wealth?